hydration for you.
Yeah. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. I'm your host, Matthew Hawkins, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ed Carbajal. Weekly, we are brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for video podcasts, MMA news, and MMA stories. Ed, what's going on, brother?
Nothing much, man. It's I get excited for Bellator Fight Week. I wish I was there in Chicago. But because they usually do something. They do their big card usually kind of like in June of the summer when they come big someplace. And this year, the Bellator is doing it in Chicago. Bellator 297. The two world title bouts, Nemkov versus Romero, and obviously the Pedersen Pitbull fight. Super excited about it. I've been following along with everything they're doing over there, including Yoel Romero's fear of heights, which I still can't get over. But it's a really stacked card. Our friend Bobby Nash is on the prelims, who's been on the podcast. It's his first fight back since his knee surgery, so hopefully he picks up a win. I was surprised not to see his name listed on anything for media or interviews this week. I kind of wish I had reached out sooner, so maybe we could have talked to him about being on. This is his first fight back in it's like a good, what was it, like 2 years that he was out because of the knee. I feel like it's a year.
Yeah, his last fight was in August of 21. So, yeah, coming up on 2 years for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Coming up. Yeah, we'll see how he rebounds from that. I'm sure he's not going to lose his strength, but knee's a knee. So
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, if Kevin Nicholson chimes in, we could ask him his take on that. And he can post it on the feed here. But yeah, man, let's bring up that card, I guess, so we can talk about it because been missing me some Bellator action with all the full send UFC cards that we've been getting. Um, yeah, so I mean, I guess we should look at the main card first because that's the fights that everybody kind of knows about.
yeah, I mean that's the big, and it's the best four fights.
Mm-hmm.
Kicks off heavyweight clash between Daniel James and Gokhan Sarikam. James coming off a win, Bellator 293 out here in Pachanga
Mm-hmm.
on a nice little win streak. Sarikam coming off a big win himself. James 15-6-1 according to Tapology. That's what they got up there, and 8 and Tapology has Sarikam at 8-2. Bellator's website has him as 8-1, so have to confirm that one. But yeah, I mean James' last fight wasn't super exciting. He fought Marcelo Golm, and it was kind of boring. And then he landed a huge shot. Big dude, lots of power, from Chicago.
Yeah. He's throwing
You
out
know,
the first pitch tonight, actually at the whatever baseball game that's going on because of he's a hometown boy and they're doing that event. It's obviously good marketing for the event. Today at the press conference, it was pretty cool. He talked about how Chicago, like when you think of Chicago and you think of sports, you think the Bulls, the Bears, and all the big four stuff. He talked about like MMA hadn't really had like like New Jersey's got its MMA seeds. Your neck of the woods has its MMA seeds, especially where you are. Like New Mexico, Arizona, Florida. Everybody talks about like there's definitely like a fan base for mixed martial arts there, and he was kind of like how Chicago doesn't really have that, so he's got an opportunity here to be that guy for Chicago. And we've seen it happen. Like it only takes one good guy to make to kind of like make a gym in an area prominent and draw more fighters, and the more talent comes in and the better everyone gets. I mean, that's how all these American Top Team, Kill Cliff, all these, Jackson Wink, all these great gyms that folks talk about. It's usually one guy that does well that can kind of like put the gym and the state on the map. Um, and I feel like if he picks up another win on a card like this, he's definitely doing that for his hometown. So I kind of like that he's like making that his mission in this fight.
That's kind of cool. I mean, really, when you think about the history of like MMA in Chicago, they've had some
Hmm.
big fights.
Hmm.
Coker's had a pretty good relationship with it as far as
Yeah.
Fedor Brett Rogers was there. Fedor Mir in Bellator. Previous was the Strike Force. The Chandler Pitbull fight was also in Chicago. So they've done a nice job of bringing some big events there. But as far as the UFC, I know they've had a few. I think Cote and Silva may have been there. Uh,
Hmm.
and I know that they've had a couple others since, but not necessarily the total hotbed. Um, really ever. I
Yeah.
I think Daniel Strauss may have fought in Pat Curran in an event, kind of in that vicinity prior to their clashes in Bellator as well.
Hmm.
XFC maybe I can't remember the promotion exactly, but
Yeah, and
yeah,
he mentioned like, pretty much everything you just mentioned. He mentioned that today too, before he led up to like what he kind of wants to do for the sport in Chicago. So I mean, listen to him talk about that. I'm probably going to write a piece on it. If no one else does, I'll probably write a piece on it uh, for my MMA news or something. Just because I feel like I don't know when he said that, and not for nothing. Shout out to Chael Sonnen for laying up that question for him to kind of put that out there because the way the press conference went today, it was similar to how like because it's under Showtime's banner, so they kind of did it like the way and I normally don't like boxing press conferences, but because they had Chael Sonnen as the moderator and leading in, he had thrown everyone a really good question, and I thought that the fact that all none of his questions were bad, he was actually the one that put it out there that Yoel Romero was afraid of heights because everybody was wondering and scared about why he wasn't there, so he put it out there for everybody. So I think the fact that him being a fighter and playing both sides of the fence as the media guy and being an athlete, he kind of did a good job with the press conference, and he laid that up for because if it was just give us questions, chances are the people that were there attending would only ask the main event guys a bunch of questions, and Nolan and a couple of other people would have a few questions written down for the people that aren't that well known. So I thought it was pretty cool how like Sonnen laid up a question for everybody that was on the panel, and that moment for James was pretty cool. It actually made me like want to root for him more. And if you look at the, I mean, it looks like 69% of Bellator's fans that vote on their website see him winning this fight, and I just hope he wins because of what he said he wants to do.
yeah, no, I mean it's always good, something positive. They had
Hmm.
a prior to his main event at the smaller event out here, 293. They had a long I don't know what's the not vignettes, not the right term because that's pro wrestling, but
Hmm.
they had a long profile on him prior to the event where at the barber shop and just kind of showing how he's intertwined with the community, and that's definitely cool to see, and a positive story.
Hmm.
It's a positive story, which is great, and it should be talked about more. Um, but anyway, so I'm gonna pick him to win by knockout. I mean, it's on Fight Live. He's big rock of a man, and I think
Hmm.
he'll land something big. Will it be exciting? I don't know. Heavyweight fights are certainly hit or miss, but I think eventually he lands something big and hurts his opponent. So I'll take him to win by knockout or TKO.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to rewatch it again. It was only a couple hours ago, but I feel like that's what he called his win for too. So I'm rooting for him for sure. And I mean, he's not just trying to win and make a name for reputation. Like he's got title aspirations on in his mind too. So they definitely got they could definitely have something with James there. Um, this fight right here.
Corey Anderson, Phil Davis. Anderson's last loss, Nemkov. Phil Davis last loss, Nemkov. Later in the evening, Nemkov fights for the title. You got to really think that this could
Hmm.
potentially be the number one contender match. Um, Man, it's really an interesting fight because for me it's interesting because Phil Davis is such a like weird thing that I'm not real sure how to always judge his fights. Like
Hmm.
he's rarely spectacular, um, but he always seems to get it done when at least I don't expect him to, or he
Yeah.
always, you know what I mean? Like he'll put together just a good enough performance to squeak out a decision, and I feel like everything in my brain's telling me Corey Anderson, but for some reason my heart's leaning Phil Davis to, you know, just win on the judges cards. I don't even know if he really wins the fights, but I just I feel like somehow I just see him circling the ring and winning the decision. I feel like I've seen it a million times.
Yeah, I know his wrestling like gets him a lot of wins, but I mean, and we've talked about him before. I know I mentioned like I think in mixed martial arts currently Phil Davis. I was looking at his record again earlier today. You know, he's only got of his submission finishes. I mean, he has 2 by Kimura, but he damn it if he doesn't go for that Kimura like like crazy. So I'm always impressed with his Kimura setups, and you know I think he's got one of the nastiest Kimuras in MMA, if not in his division of 205 pounds across the sport, because it's something that I don't know if it's because of his build, um, but it's something that it's definitely one of his more uh, scary offensive tools when he fights. I don't know if Corey Anderson's a guy he's going to hit it on, because I mean Corey Anderson has done well since he's been in Bellator. I mean, they're both like you said, they both lost to Nemkov, but Nemkov's a champion. I mean that's saying a lot. Um, Still, it's a hard fight to pick. It looks like a lot of the fans are leaning towards Anderson. What's funny is when they faced off today, and I'm seeing like the dimensions they only have like they don't have their reach and stuff here, but you know they have Anderson at 6'3" and Davis at 6'2", but they seem pretty even when they faced off today, which I was a little surprised. I actually thought Davis was the taller guy. I don't know if it's because he's wiry, but I for some reason I thought he had like the I feel like he might have a reach advantage still, even though he's an inch shorter or whatever based on these numbers, but I don't know, man. It's a tough fight to pick. It's I could just because of his wrestling background and his experience, I would not be surprised if Davis pulls off uh, a win here based on just his activity and keeping Anderson busy. But I do think Anderson has like enough power to slow down. Like if he's more aggressive and it puts a pressure on him, I think he could pull off a victory. I don't see anyone getting finished per se, unless again like that Kimura. If he lands that Kimura, we know he's going to go for it, and if he pulls it off, I'm definitely not going to be surprised. So I'm kind of like this one. I'm not even going to make a pick. I'm just excited to watch it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and that's kind of. I mean, I made my pick, but
Mm,
I look at his record: 4 split decision wins in his last 10 fights.
mm,
Like it's just in my mind, like he just if it goes to the judges, he seems to figure out a way to squeeze it out. I yeah, and but I think Corey Anderson should win. He's the younger
mm-hmm,
fighter. He's the I think he's the more talented MMA fighter,
mm-hmm.
tool wise. I think he brings a little bit more, possibilities to the table. But Phil Davis is just, like I said, just a consummate veteran who
Yeah.
just who seems to always pull it out when for me unexpectedly. So I don't know. Good fight though. Second fight of the night, coming off that heavyweight fight, and then man, then the walls come down, and we get friggin' Sergio Pettis, Patricio Pitbull, Pitbull
Mm-hmm.
looking for the triple champ status. Now he did give up his lightweight belt, you know, 2 years ago ish, to allow some other
His brother.
his brother to
Yeah.
inevitably win the title, and then it's moved on since then. But um, Sergio Pettis, who uh, picked up the title, beating Horiguchi with a spectacular late
Mm-hmm.
spinning back fist when he was on the brink of a loss. Pitbull at 135 is scary as a motherfucker to me if he can make weight, healthy
Yeah.
and comes in hydrated against
Mm-hmm.
Pettis, who's kind of naturally, perhaps more of a 125er, at least spent
Mm-hmm.
a ton of his career there. Um, Man, I think Pitbull wins this fight. I don't if everything is brought to the table, I think
Mm.
Pitbull dominates the fight. If I'm being honest.
I'm you know, I can't disagree with you. Let me see what the fans say here.
And as Nicholson
Yeah.
is mentioning in our comments,
Oh,
he
good.
he mentioned Bobby Nash, who you already spoke about, but Sergio Pettis is also coming off of an injury, so
Yeah.
Um,
A couple guys coming back from knee surgery. Yeah, they're both knee surgeries. Bobby Nash and Sergio Pettis. I'm glad you're chiming in, Mr. Nicholson. Um, I mean, the knee thing with Bobby, I know about because we've had him on the podcast, and I kind of kept in touch with him while he was nursing, going through all that. I should have been better about following up with him, getting him on here before this fight, especially didn't have his name on anything this week. He's on the prelims, by the way. We're just gonna skim through those before we exit the Bellator portion of the show. But yeah. So Sergio Pettis addressed the knee thing yesterday, and again a little bit today, as far as like ring rust and experience. The thing about that still makes Pettis dangerous in the fight is he doesn't deny any of it. He says ring rust is something he never dealt with before, and the only time it seems to come to mind for him is when media and folks like us bring it up, because he's like, otherwise he's actually, he talks about stress and anxiousness that he's looking to release in the cage when he actually gets to fight Pitbull. But the flip side to the coin for me, since I watched all the media day stuff from yesterday and the press conference today, and having watched Pitbull at a lot of media events, he seemed, first of all, he obviously looks smaller because he's fighting at a lighter weight. And he seems, I don't know if it's his focus on the fight ahead of him or if the weight cut is going, well for him, because he seemed a little. He didn't say much. His answers to questions were very short. Had the sunglasses on yesterday and today the whole time, which I'm wondering if he's just hiding the sunken, like the stress in his eyes of the weight cut. As of yesterday, I know he said he had 8 pounds to go. I don't know where he's at now. No one really asked him. I don't think anyone asked him today about the numbers when they streamed that press conference. What's left for him to cut, but obviously they have to make weight. They're doing their final cuts now so they can make weight tomorrow morning for Friday. So I'm wondering, like, how skill wise and experience and everything we've seen, Pitbull's been a force in Bellator, but I'm wondering how bad it is. And even Pettis said it yesterday. He was just like, when he tried to do flyweight, he talked about that those 10 pounds, on paper, it seems like, yeah, it's just 10 pounds, but those 10 pounds are rough. They even asked him if he would do the new flyweight division that they're announcing, in July. And he was like, no, he's like, if it makes sense financially, maybe I'll try, but he'd rather not cut the 10 pounds. So I'm wondering, we're going to find out, obviously, fight night, but um, I wouldn't be surprised if Pitbull wins. But yeah, I don't know if I can. From what I'm seeing, it's hard for me to pick him decisively to win.
10 pounds is definitely a lot of weight, no doubt, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you're 140 pounds or 140, 45 pounds cut
Yeah,
down, like Pettis after he's already taken 20 off or 10 off, and then he adds another
yeah.
10. It's definitely a lot. Yeah, I mean, I just assuming that they both come in fairly healthy into the cage. I
Mm-hmm.
just can't see. I mean, Pettis was getting worked over by Horiguchi
Mm-hmm.
prior to the spinning back fist, so I don't feel like he brings something to the table that Pitbull hasn't seen 1,000 times,
Mm-hmm.
and has really worked his way through it in pretty dominant, or really dominant fashion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's I kind of I just in my mind I can't see him losing to a guy in theory, so much that many weight
Yeah,
classes lower. But like, as you say, I mean, if there things can happen,
yeah.
so
They'll
but
stream the ceremonial weigh-ins, because they weigh in the morning and then they do the ceremonial one sometime in the afternoon, close to after they, So we'll see when they face off how he actually looks. So they'll have the shirt off and everything. We'll see how if he looks healthy or if he's going to look like T.J. Dillashaw when he tried to do flyweight, which everybody I think we all can agree that wasn't a good look for him. Um, which shout out to Joseph Correa, my old boss from Proof Media. I'd love to see same day weigh-ins for both boxing and MMA. I don't know about that, man. I mean, it was a thing once upon a time, but like there's a regional promotion out here in Jersey that does that for certain events. I don't want to because I don't like it, but like the way that they do it, like they do same day weigh-ins for like Dead Serious, the thing that Mr. Peacock does. At least for the grappling, they do that, and it
A lot
just
of
makes
amateur events still do
yeah,
same day weigh-ins
and
to
it just
avoid.
but it
Yeah.
just makes for such a long taxing day for the fighter that they have so much to do. I don't know. I don't. I like that they get the 24 hours to rehydrate. I think it plus it gives them some time to reset and rest. Um,
I do agree with everything that Joseph is saying in
mhm.
theory. As somebody who
But-
attends a trillion events like I do, the idea of finding out hours prior to the event that
mhm.
multiple fights are canceled because people are missing weight is kind of something that it's bad enough the day before,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
the same day, like, but I do agree, like, and I think it used to happen more back in the day because people didn't
yeah.
cut as much weight. A
Plus,
lot of
it's
guys,
at the pro level. It's like a commission thing because, like the I know in New York, like they have 24 hours to offer refunds and stuff like that when something happens, especially if they lose their main event or anything they advertise. Like that card subject to change bullshit they put in the posters, like their little like gimme so that they don't have to give it, hoping folks won't ask for refunds. But we all saw what happened with what was it 229 UFC
it,
229.
if the main event's canceled in certain states, then
Mm-hmm.
refunds are required. Not so much maybe small states like Montana or something, but
Mm-hmm.
I know California has that law. Nevada, I think I'm not real sure about.
Yeah,
I think
New York has it for 24
New
hours.
York
Yeah.
has it, yeah. So, I mean, I in a perfect world, I wish we, weigh-ins were something where kind of like you never were in doubt. You just kind of walked up to a scale. Everybody, you fought somebody who was your size, and you kept fighting. You know,
Open
um,
weight.
but in an open weight in a sense, but not like
Yeah.
not mismatch open weight. Like, hey, I'm 224, you're 224, let's fight. And let's agree that we're gonna fight at 224. Nobody, like,
Yeah, yeah.
like we're naturally the same weight, so why are we cutting weight to fight each other? That's most of these guys. So it's kind of or why are we cutting more than 5 pounds just to look better on the scales? Like what? That just seems like it's kind of you know, I, you know what I mean? Like if the guys if 155ers are cutting down to 135, why don't they just both fight each other at 155? I mean, that's the
Mhm.
perfect world, you
Yeah.
know. But yeah, great fight, co-main event. In my opinion, it really should be the main event. Um,
Yeah, a lot of people were saying that too. Like why is this fight not the because it's why is this not the main event? People were kind of like, I don't know, but it's two title fights, so I don't see I don't usually the heavyweight's always main event. I think that's just an old school fight game thing. But
the heavier weights generally do, so I totally am with that. I kind it's hard for me not to believe there's a little bit of the UFC in Romero's name that they wanted to have more on the headliner. Um, which makes sense to get fans, but it sure seems like you could. It sure seems like you could. You'd want to focus on Pitbull, who your poster boy.
yeah.
Um, but with that said, Nemkov Romero. I mean, Nemkov is. A lot of people think he's the number one light heavyweight in the world now, especially with John Jones going up to heavyweight. I mean, there's never really been a better time to make that argument
Hmm.
um, than right now. 16-2 fighter, fairly dominant. I know he had that kind of misstep against Corey Anderson that ended in a no contest. But other than that, he's looked outstanding. Romero's hit or miss, man. Romero's kind of like the heavyweight, middleweight, or heavyweight, light heavyweight that kind of just plods around nowadays and can really just stick you or, and hurt you when he hits you. Everybody kind of wants to bring his wrestling, his whole career. Everybody said, when are we going to see it? When are we going to see it? Really,
Hmm.
never have. We've seen glimpses of it, so we know that it's there. I am curious about what Nemkov's strategy
Did you
is
ever
in this fight.
did you ever watch any wrestling footage from him when he wrestled?
I've seen
There-
some, yeah.
There's a clip out there when he does an ankle pick on a guy, and it looks like he almost rips the dude's hip out. It's the guy's just a
I
monstrosity.
believe it. I
Yeah,
believe
yeah.
it. That's what I mean. I wonder what Nemkov's strategy going into this fight is looking like. Is he going to stand in front of Romero? Is he going to test the waters and try to get him down and do some ground and pound? Um, I don't know, but it's a hell of a fight. I know Ed
Yeah, I'm
seems to
here.
have. Oh, you're there. Okay,
It's
just
just
lost
my camera lost the hold on.
lost
He-
visual, but good fight. I mean, so when it comes to my pick, I'm gonna go with Nemkov. I don't. I It's hard for me to believe that he's gonna. I think he wins the fight. I think he's the prime MMA fighter in this contest, and I think Romero is a little bit still all over the place, um, too often. So I don't feel confident enough to pick Romero. I'm gonna go with Nemkov to win by decision,
Yeah,
which would be an interesting 5 rounds. But I am gonna go with Nemkov.
yeah. That seems to be the theme too, and people, he was asked about that during the press conference today because if you remember his last fight, I think it was his last fight. He purposely went the 3 rounds because people were saying he couldn't go, he couldn't fight a full MMA fight because of how long, his age and blah blah blah. So he did it, and he still pulled off a win. I don't know if it was the last fight or which fight it was, but it was one of his more recent Bellator fights. And then so that was asked about him today, rounds 4 and 5, and not for nothing. I mean, if he can't do it, then that would probably, I would think that would make him want to finish the fight. Come with all the aggression that we know he has and the power he has to take out Nemkov early. But that being said, I mean, it is Vadim Nemkov. I mean, he's proven himself to be a formidable opponent. Not easy to beat. And But it is Yoel Romero. I think he's got a puncher's chance. Let's take a look at what the fans are saying. The fans are leaning Romero.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah,
It's close.
yeah. I mean, it's 52% of the fans say Romero, 47 say Nemkov. I mean, that's probably fair too, just because I do think Romero, again, the puncher's chance is it's like a really dangerous puncher. So if he hurts Nemkov, to the point that he's just going to show up and get pounded out, then like a first or second round stoppage is definitely not out of place. But it's hard in combat sports. It's hard not to pick the younger man. So I think if anything, Nemkov can pull off a decision victory.
That's kind of what I see happening.
Mm-hmm.
But hell of a fight
Yeah.
card.
Yeah,
That's
this whole card is stacked. Before we like move on to other stuff, I just want to briefly bring up the prelims because, I mean, if you look at again, our boy Bobby Nash is fighting. They don't have his picture up, but I want to bring it up because it's worth mentioning. Again, I mean, like as Nicholson mentioned, he's the other knee. Here we go. Bobby Nash, he's fighting Kyle Crutchmer, who's a formidable opponent. 79% of, obviously, I think that 79% of the fans that think he's going to win is obviously because of, again, talk about ring rust. But folks got to remember when Nash was, before Nash got hurt, he was laying waste to anyone he fought, especially, he did his XFC thing. The XFC kind of fell apart, but they had a tournament that he was literally, was it like 2 or 3 first round finishes he had during the tournament? And he was somebody, he was on his way before, obviously, an injury sidelined him. So I'm looking forward to that fight. We're just skimming through the prelims really quick, but there's a lot of there's a
Jaleel
lot.
Willis versus Kura
Yeah.
Magomedov, 10-0 fighter. Should be an interesting fight. Mike Hamill always seems
Mm-hmm.
to have an exciting fight. And then El Manuel Sanchez, El Matador is
Yeah.
used to seeing him towards the top of the card. He's down there after some tough luck losses.
But it's a lot of prelims. So, like, if you know, I mean, the main card's on Showtime. So if you don't have Showtime, you still got a lot of good fights to watch on Bellator, the YouTube channel, and Showtime's YouTube channel. They stream it both. But this is one I plan on. Here's the one you were talking about, Jaleel Willis and Ramzan Magomedov, one of the Magomeds, and so it's definitely uh, uh, probably the best card they've put on so far this year, outside of the risen, however you say it.
Yeah, the one upcoming, we'll see.
Hmm.
But I mean, this has everything for spectacular uh, card start to finish. But particularly the main card is loaded
Mm-hmm.
for Bellator standards and really for MMA standards for top
Mm-hmm.
level MMA. A couple other things going on this weekend. Friday, BKFC. Man, what number are we at now? They're flying along these days. BKFC 45. Luis Palomino, the champ,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the goat, right? The early goat of BKFC, 8-0. Fights James Lilly, 7-0 in bare knuckle fighting. Um, 5-6 is MMA, but came over to bare knuckle boxing and clean boxer from Wales. Really found his niche undefeated again. Like I said, 7-0. Hell of a main event. Palomino is a star over there and just an awesome, good dude. It seems like who
Yeah.
loves to put on a show for the fans, and he always seems to want to fight in Florida where he can where he's up close and personal with them. So
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a the bringing up Palomino. I saw him fight those wars with Justin Gaethje and World Series of Fighting, and we would be remiss if we didn't mention, speaking of WSOF champs and contenders, Marlon Moraes hung up the gloves last week. When he got, what was it, like his, I don't know how many knockouts it's been for him. But I mean, sad to see because that was somebody that was kind enough. It's funny, Joseph's chiming in on this podcast. It was Forefront Proof Media that I spoke with him in Madison Square Garden. About just combat sports at the time. The ban hadn't been lifted on MMA in New York yet, and it's crazy that to see his career come to an end like that. But I mean, speaking of career endings, you see a career. Most careers in combat sports are mostly in MMA. When they have to hang up the gloves, it's because of picking up losses like that. Versus how Amanda Nunes hung up her gloves last weekend at the last UFC event. So it's rare. I don't blame her for retiring like that because you usually don't get to leave on a win. Most fighters sadly go out on their shields. But I wanted to just make sure I mentioned Marlon Moraes this week on the podcast because, being on the PFL, with the fantastic marketing they do over there, you don't get to hear much about stuff like that, especially with fighters like him. So he definitely was somebody that I really liked in MMA, and I'm
yeah,
glad he hung up. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it was due. My history of watching him fight is I was at World Series of Fighting 1 when he
Mm-hmm.
became the breakthrough star. He was supposed to get stomped out by Miguel Torres, and he upset Miguel Torres, and suddenly was this star that arisen in World Series of Fighting. And I saw him fight out here. Um, at a World Series Fighting 28. He fought in, I don't know. I mean, it was kind of a joke on the internet for a while, but they held an event in a public gym, and there was
Mm-hmm.
volleyball going on in the background, and it was the most one of the most bizarre setups for a fairly big organization cage fight that I ever seen in my life. And then I saw him fight in UFC against Jose Aldo and beat
Mm-hmm.
Jose Aldo. Questionable decision in a lot of people's mind, but really kind of it was the rebound from his loss to Cejudo, um, and that was his last hurrah. It's been all downhill from there. A lot of rough losses, and
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, just a spectacular fighter who, for his run was one of the most fun fighters to watch. His use of kicks and I mean, he was a complete fighter. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
um,
remember when he fought Henry Cejudo. I actually had him picked to win, and then then Henry Cejudo reminded me of how nasty Olympic competitors get when they come from the Olympics into professional
yeah,
combat
it
sports.
was when
Yeah,
Cejudo all of a sudden started just throwing hammers, and
yeah,
uh, but Marias was looking great early in that fight.
yeah, yeah,
I think I don't remember which round the fight ended, second, third round, but I'm pretty sure he won the first round, if memory
yeah.
serves. Um, yeah, and then you mentioned Amanda Nunes again. I mean, is another fighter that I feel like I got to see throughout most of her career. I saw her fight prior to uh, the title win. She fought Sarah McMahon on a fight night in Nashville. Saw her win at UFC 200,
Hmm.
where we ran into each other that night. She upset Misha Tate.
Yeah.
Um, and picked up the title. Saw her defend against Durandamy. Saw her beat Cyborg. Uh, and I'm forgetting other fights. I've seen her.
Got a sinus infection when you went to go see her that one
There you
year.
go. Yeah. Got a day in cancellation. That was the gut blow right there. That would be like that's like the same day weigh-ins to me. Like right there. Like you're drinking a cocktail, walking around Vegas, and your phone starts blowing up because someone's got a sinus infection and the main event's canceled.
Yeah.
That hurts worse than driving into Vegas and hearing that Ferguson or Khabib have missed weight for the 9th combined time or whatever that
Or
was.
you're at the Red Rock Casino with your girlfriend and they tell you John Jones popped for PEDs and
Yeah,
the day before the fight. So.
there's that. Or when you're walking to the arena and you find out Matt Mitrione has kidney stones and Fedor's not fighting any longer. Um, tough, hard times, hard fan times. That's why the same day weigh-ins
yeah.
it's like I said,
Yeah.
the day before to find out fights are canceled, you got some time to regroup. You got a lot of time to drink and, realize what you're getting into and,
Yeah.
to get your mind straight. Whereas I just beat in line to get into the arena and be like, yeah, so-and-so just missed weight 15 minutes ago. You're like,
Yeah, I
oh,
remember that Matt Mitrione. I remember you sending me the picture of the sign on the door at the arena. You were like, "Oh my god, you got to be kidding!" I actually heard the news from you first before I saw it flying all over the place.
goddamn, in some rat-infested motel in San Jose. I ended up, just a debacle all the way around. But that night, that was Josh Thompson's retirement fight.
Yeah.
Turned out to be after he lost to the other Pitbull brother, but Patricky. So yeah, Palomino Lily, a banger of a fight. And then also the UFC on Saturday. Not sure about all the broadcast stuff for that one,
Probably
but
ESPN Plus.
Jared Cannonier, Marvin Vittori, an important middleweight fight. Kind of in the shuffle that is the middleweight right now, with Pahea moving up, Adesanya already having beaten Whitaker twice.
So the UFC says ESPN and ESPN Plus for the main card. So it looks like it, and then ESPN2 for the prelims. But we already know ESPN will pull the fucking rug out from under you when you try to watch the shit. So if you have ESPN Plus, you could definitely watch it. But otherwise, you might turn it on and there'll be like a the World League of Little League World League Series or whatever will be on instead. So
yeah, but good fight. Good main event. Top to bottom, typical fight night card. Not gonna go break any of that down, but good fight. BKFC, good fight. Bellator, outstanding fight card. So that's
there's actually in the prelims. I hope they show the prelims on ESPN too. The Jimmy Flick is on the I love Jimmy Flick. I know he retired and then came back, but he was a fighter that I definitely liked watching. He's got a flyweight bout against Alessandro Costa. So yeah, it's definitely a good weekend for fight fans. But you're stupid if Bellator 297 is not on your radar as your like peak event that you're gonna kind of like watch everything around and there's a CFFC card in Atlantic City too on Friday. So you don't have nothing to watch, but this fight card Bellator 297, with Nemkov and Romero, and then obviously the 135 title aspirations of Pitbull and Pettis. That there's a lot of drama there that you want to keep an eye on.
You mentioned being stupid. Another quick little topic to wrap up the show. A lot of people are on Daniel Cormier DC for in their minds saying something stupid in his comment that he didn't see Jim Miller as a Hall of Famer. I know your take on it, but I am interested in maybe some reasons other than, hometown, hero, hometown, favorite, kind of thing. So before I give my opinion and probably end the show on a down note, why don't you give us your side on the Jim Miller, I guess Cowboy Cerrone kind of argument here that we're hearing in the last.
So for me, obviously I'm root for Jersey fighters and Jersey dudes. I was gonna say that too when we were talking about Bellator with Corey Anderson and Phil Davis. I should be rooting for Corey Anderson. He trains out here in Jersey, hunts out here in Jersey. So, I I always root for fighters from Jersey because I just feel like it's kind of like the way you do for sports teams and stuff like that. However, so for the thing about Jim Miller, it's not just because he's from New Jersey. I think everything that everyone's mentioning, the number of wins and his accolades, I agree with all of that. I mean, there is some bias. Shout out to Hunter Homostek, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. He's the GM for 247 Fighting Championships out in Pittsburgh, and he spent some time, you know, with Miller camping on the weekend. Him and Dwayne Finley when he did his run with Flow Sports. There's a really good, if you read Dwayne's book, In the Cold Distance, you can read about that weekend that they kind of went out camping together. So him and DC got into it on social media specifically about this. Um, you know, and again, I agree with Hunter. Hunter's not from Jersey. He spent some time with Miller though, so he's got some bias because there's like a personal connection there. Um, but I think uh, being that his career is not done yet, I think his if he gets to the UFC 300 like he wants to, and he keeps up picking up wins and doing well, I mean, I think that is what makes him deserving of the Hall of Fame, if he gets in there because he's obviously not done yet. And one of the things you mentioned the Cerrone fight, with me, I remember when he first fought Cerrone, he was here at it's called the Ocean Resort now, but back then it was the Revel in Atlantic City. I went as a fan, um, and rooting for Miller. He lost that fight, and then he was able to avenge that. So to me, when fighters do stuff like that and they avenge their losses, that kind of just makes cements them more in my mind as a true martial artist. That kind of, they erase the bad parts of their record so they can move forward. So I think it just made him a better fighter. Um, I don't know. I think if he gets to UFC 300, and even if he gets there and loses at UFC 300, I think that should make him a Hall of Famer. So Daniel Cormier, I don't even know. I don't listen to a lot of the UFC fucking mumble jumble and all these UFC centric podcasts. Like I can't listen to them anymore. I mean, but you and I talk about that enough privately, but like it's just I don't disagree. I sided with Hunter and everyone else that thinks Miller should be a Hall of Famer. The guy's definitely he's part of the UFC and the sports history of when it was before it was a household. You know what I mean? Like he's fighting from then till now. I think that makes him Hall of Fame worthy, and especially if he gets UFC 300, that you should definitely consider him. So that's my side of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I'm on the fence in a sense. I lean towards DC side, which is obviously not going to gain me any fans, but and I don't want to say it in a knock to
So,
Miller. I just, for me, the Hall of Fame should mean more. Obviously, the UFC has diluted some of it, perhaps, but I think people confuse the fighters that get into their fights as opposed
mm-hmm,
to like actual you know Hall of Fame members due to their careers as opposed to a single fight. The kind of the Guidas, the Sanchez's, the you know the Force or the Stephen Bonners of the people that are name or around the UFC Hall of Fame.
mm-hmm,
I the general thing I try to use for other sports, and I know you're not a fan of team and stick and ball sports per se, um, is like was somebody ever considered like great or like we're making an argument you're the best in the world at any time in your career. And I
mm-hmm,
don't, and with Jim Miller, other than his run early on, where he came up short against Benson Henderson, kind of in a number one contender fight, like I don't really feel like. I mean, he main evented against Diaz on like one of the early fight nights. He main evented, I believe, against maybe Florian or Sanchez. I can't
mm-hmm,
remember. I think I look back. I think he had two main events in early in his career. I just for me, all the numbers aside, like if you don't have a championship, like the wins are great, but like and he's got some great wins, but he's
mm-hmm.
also got a wins against in the last, in this last run, he's got a lot of wins over people that like we don't really know a whole lot about, or guys that kind
Mm-hmm.
of washed out. He's got a couple wins over guys that are on the the tough right now, trying to get back into the UFC and that kind of thing. And that's not necessarily a knock. It's who was in front of you. You can lose any fight,
Mm-hmm.
any night. He was always a gamer. Like that's the thing. I like. He seems like a really good dude. Everything about him is what you want in a fighter. For me, the Hall of Fame should stick to guys that you looked at and you went, okay, like maybe he wasn't the best, but like he was only not the best because Anderson Silva existed
Mm-hmm.
or BJ Penn existed. So there was like you can get to a point where okay, it was Henderson and what Frankie Edgar probably about that time when he would have, because that's probably I think that's who Benson Anderson probably went on to face
Mm-hmm.
was Edgar. Um, so you can argue okay, yeah, he maybe for a small window he was top five, so there is that, but I don't know if I can. To me, you just had to be great there had to be a moment in time where you said Jim Miller is like arguably the best in the world. And to me, like I don't think that moment ever existed. Cerrone or Cowboy Cerrone, when I mentioned him, I meant more like he's kind of getting tied in with this as far as like, does he deserve to be in the Hall of Fame?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see him in the same boat. Like Cowboy Cerrone was always like right there, but was he ever? Did you ever think he was better than the champ? Did you
Mm-hmm.
ever, you know what I mean? And when he fought the champ, Cerrone never. Cerrone's thing is that he got what 4 or 5 title fights between WWC and the UFC and just lost every one of them. So
Mm-hmm.
you can kind of go, well, he never was. Jim Miller is like, okay, well, was he? But he had an off night against Henderson, and he never. And then after that, he just never got that opportunity. So I'm not trying to knock him. I think the records are spectacular. I hope he fights at UFC 300. I think it's something that's really cool, and I think it's something that should be honored. Um,
Yeah. So
more
if he let's say he keeps picking up W's and he gets to 300, do you change your opinion?
Well, he's 5-4 in his last 9 fights.
Mm-hmm.
So like what does his record have to be like in the next 5 fights?
Mm-hmm.
If he goes 5-0 and earns a title shot, then okay. But if he goes 3-2 in the next five and is 8-7 in his last 15 fights, to me that's not Hall of Fame. Like and
Yeah,
again,
but then
like
I mean it's also the UFC Hall of Fame. Like you have to think about too.
again, but it's our only
Yeah.
MMA Hall of Fame we have. It's all
Yeah.
we have. So that's what I mean. It's an opinion. I get why fans want him in. I totally
Mm-hmm.
get the admiration and everything, and the records are they're in the record book, but I longevity can create a lot of records. So I don't know if I don't. It's really interesting. I know a lot of fighters back him getting in, so I'm on the wrong side of history books when this is written. I totally
Mm-hmm.
understand that as far as people's opinion, whether he gets in the Hall of Fame. I think he's going to. I think the UFC is going to
Oh,
put
you
him
know
in.
what's funny? It just hit me now. The background we're using here, that photo,
Is the Ravel? Yeah,
it's from that fight. It's see, there's
yeah,
a UFC logo on the bottom of the
yeah. I was going to
that
mention that.
it's from that night actually that I took the photo.
Was that? You remember what UFC number that was?
We'd have to look
Was
at
it a
the
fight night or was it a pay per
it
view?
was a fight night. It was a fight
Fight
night.
night. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Trying to try to guess the pay per
Yeah,
view, but
because the Ovation Hall that our little arena that they have there, it's not really it's
oh,
inside
okay,
of a
okay,
casino.
okay. Oh, yeah, this wasn't
Yeah,
in
it wasn't Boardwalk Hall.
it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, again, like obviously the future can unfold and he can pick up some big wins. I think he's due a big fight though. Like
Hmm.
I like he just fought a last minute replacement. I think let's get like why is he fighting on all these? And again, not to be totally disrespectful, but a lot of bush league cards.
Hmm.
He's been a prelim fighter a lot. Like let's like if you want to do it, let's give him a big fight to wrap his career up. Like if he gets to 300, don't give me a prelim against somebody who's coming off the contender series.
Hmm.
Like give me a top 5 opponent and go, dude, here's your moment to shine. You're the opening fight against the pay-per-view against the number 4 ranked fighter in the world. If you lose,
Yeah, I
you
mean
move on, but it's like I
there's
don't know.
arguments on both sides, I guess. I mean, I don't know what again. I don't know what DC said. Maybe I should go back and listen to it
Nothing too
again.
disrespectful. Same kind of thing
Because
I'm saying.
mm,
Essentially about hey, he did just longevity creates the stuff, and he just doesn't feel like he has the accolades to be in the Hall of Fame, and he really he doesn't have the trophies, he doesn't have the belts, so there's got to be other factors, and while he hits a lot of them, I it's borderline for me, and I feel
mm,
like if you let him in, you're starting to open up the door. You already opened up the door with Cowboy Cerrone,
mm-hmm.
so that's kind of already there. But I mean, I think he's going to get in. and I hope he gets to 300. I hope he goes on a 5-fight win streak. I hope he
Yeah.
finishes his career winning the world championship and retires. But and then there's no doubt in anything. But I just don't know. I'm just, but I definitely I understand the fans the fans want to have him in there for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, time will tell. Like I said, I mean, for me, if he hits the numbers he wants to hit, I know again. Yeah, I know I'm biased because of the whole Jersey thing and just watching him, over the years. But um, he's definitely somebody that again, like the torch. We've seen the torch pass too often lately in this sport. So it is a young man's game. So we'll see what
And he's
happens.
still
But
hanging in there and kicking
mhm,
ass,
yeah,
and he's not going on a 10-fight win streak, but he's picking up wins to keep it all going. So more power to him, and I look forward to his next fight. But we shall see. A lot of action this weekend, so uh, keep up on Ed on Twitter. For stories that coming out of Bellator and stuff as he's doing a long distance coverage
mhm.
of the event. Fans can follow the show on Twitter at Combat Hour, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram. Follow me, Matthew Hawkins, at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter, Carbeerzol on Instagram, and Old Head Carb on Twitch. And again, weekly, our show is brought to you by AllAccessMMA.com. Check out AllAccessMMA.com for a video podcast, MMA stories, and MMA news. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a good night.
Peace.